Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 73 of Podcast vs. Enemies, a Destiny Massive Breakdown show. We are back this week after our brief summer break, and good God, do we have a lot of news to cover. So let's get right to it. Lads, what have you been up to during our break? Court, Impetus, how are you guys doing?
I'm doing really good, man. I hope you guys are doing well. I won't take up too much of the time because I know both of you have been the more active out of the trio here. But just a few GMs here and there. Lots of DMZ as usual. I did add a few art builds to the builds forum over on our Discord server. That was Shinobu's Vow and Liar's Handshake builds. But yeah, pretty quiet. My vacation isn't until the start of September. So, Impetus, what have you been up to?
Oh, just a few things here. Went on vacation with some family, had a great time up in the Catskills, and then I drove back and had to move. Made a little move across town here. I'm all settled in. Still got a few boxes to unpack and stuff, but the battle station is up and running, so, just the essentials. I have, of course, had very little Destiny playtime. I logged in to snag a few Eververse sets, but other than that, not really been playing a lot of video games. I did do some Destiny stuff out of the game, though. Very happy to hop on D&B for one final episode, which I'll talk about a little bit later on, but that was a really cool experience. That's kind of been what I've been doing. How about you, Saint?
Yeah, I also was moving, so it's kind of a part of the motivator for our few week break there, because neither of us had PCs set up, which are pretty important for recording a podcast. And I've got a little temporary setup right now. I've showed the guys. I'll have to post this on Twitter, but I don't have my desk yet, so I just have this what is essentially a laptop stand that I've set my PC up on, which is I don't think it could be smaller. It's stable, but I don't think it could be any physically smaller. I basically have my keyboard and mic and everything stacked up right on top of a table that is holding up, my monitor right over the tower. But it's working. We're here. We're recording. It's working. Also landed a new job. We don't talk about work a ton on the show, but it's a big impact. Huge relief, honestly, landing a job. I'm really excited to start that. In about 3 weeks or so, right after Labor Day. May take 1 week off again, kind of at the end of the summer, depending on how that all shakes out. But yeah, really excited for that as that kind of gets closer over the next few weeks. And similar to Impetus, haven't really been playing a lot of, just a lot of games. I did get in a little DMZ time, couple GM runs this past week, just helping some buddies round out their Conquerors, guilding for the season. And I'm also about to finish up Fallout 4. I'm hoping to finish that up this week. I'm pretty sure I'm in the last stretch of that game, if I had to guess. I haven't beat it before, so it's hard to say exactly, but I'm pretty sure I'm about to close out the main quest line, which has honestly been really good. There's a lot of really good plot twists in that game. I know this is 6 years old at this point, so it's hard to be spoilery, but really enjoyed that one. All right. Who do we have to thank before we get into the meat of the episode here?
Yeah, so during our break, we did get a review over on Apple Podcasts. So thank you, Orlo Chavez, for that review. And of course, we'd like to wish our sponsors a big thank you. And that is A Modern Viking, Asking Monk, Bryce Roney, Deacon, IMK Rose, Moonlight, and This Moment. Thank you very much for your support. You can send us all kinds of feedback directly to any of our socials or via the DMB Discord server. Positive, critical, and constructive feedback helps with the trajectory of the podcast and how we present and break down builds, activities, and much more in the PvE Sandbox for all kinds of Destiny players. We also want to extend a special thanks and appreciation to everyone that supports PvE, whether that's downloading and listening to our show, discussing it on on social media and our Discord server, or supporting us via Patreon. Speaking of Patreon, if you'd like to support the show, please visit DestinyMassiveBreakdowns.com and click on the link to Patreon. You'll get access to members-only channels in Discord, behind the scenes, like episode previews and all that jazz, and input on the future of the show, and access to our legendary annual merch drop. All right, Impetus, what are we covering in this week's show?
We are responding to a lot. a lot of stuff has happened while we've been out doing other things. So we do have an update on the DMB podcast changes and the subsequent dev interview that was a part of that. The highlights from that pertain to our side of the Destiny Sandbox. We do have the 10.8 TWID highlights. We've got the state of the game for 2023, and we have the Season 22 armor and abilities preview. So a lot of stuff that we're going to be talking about that is mostly focused on upcoming things. We're of course still waiting on a few other previews articles that's pertaining to the upcoming season, and then of course we do have the showcase right around the corner at the end of this month. So that's going to be kind of what our game plan will be for the upcoming episodes, is just talking about what we can look forward to with the next season, the next few seasons, and of course what's coming in the final shape as that information is revealed to us. But let's focus on what is something that's already happened. If you did not already know, our sibling podcast, Destiny Massive Breakdowns, the OG show that covers the PvP sandbox, has come to a conclusion. The last episode did go out a few weeks ago. I was able to join Lego LaFlash for one very special episode that featured Merc Kyt and Kitkucha, the original hosts. Very, very special opportunity. The Bungie allowed both of them to come back one final time here. Merc got a chance to discuss a lot of the upcoming weapon changes, and then we also got a very rare insight into quality assurance with Kyt and how Season 21's Whetstone exotic mission was tuned from a difficulty perspective. So this was a really, really cool opportunity for our final episode. Lego has already put up two very large, you might even say massive breakdowns covering both topics. You can see the full transcription on the Destiny Massive Breakdowns website. It is a very dense episode. I'm very happy that I did not have to do the transcript for this one. There was a lot of information that was put out there by the two guys there, so very grateful for all of that. Do definitely pull up the transcription while you're listening to the episode if you haven't already, as there's, again, a lot of very specific stuff that's mentioned that's new to us. With the conclusion of Destiny Massive Breakdowns, our podcast will now take over as the flagship. Merc and Kyt still aren't going anywhere. They're going to continue to host Beneath Twin Suns for the Star Wars content. But yes, Destiny Massive Breakdowns is no more. We do want to give a huge shout out to Lego and Tony, that's Ill Physics, for stepping into hosting duties during 2023. Also want to thank Mercules and Kyt for setting up our show and giving us the freedom and independence to run this. Of course, do want to reiterate, we are not going anywhere. Our show is chugging along, full speed ahead. We're going to be covering Destiny news, PvE content, PvE breakdowns, and more leading up to and beyond the final shape. We will also remain on covering PvE content only, but if Bungie does ever need to do a community podcast with some devs to talk about both sides of the sandboxes, we are open to that, of course. And you can still join us in the DMB community over on our Discord server. You can see a bunch of DMB community-made content, apps, infographics, and spreadsheets over on the server and on our website that can enhance your Destiny experience. So once again, from the three of us, thank you, Merc and Kyt, for what's been a really, really special opportunity. Yeah, do you guys have anything that you want to say before we get into what was discussed during that final episode?
I will say, obviously, we've been hearing a lot from the weapons team. They're definitely like the mainstay when it comes to community podcasts, not just our or Destiny Massive Breakdowns, but other shows as well. But it was really great to see and to hear from Kyt from the perspective of quality assurance. I know, I did reach out to Kyt and just say, we'd love to hear more from other places within Bungie, with other departments. And I know that's not always possible, but hopefully in the future we do get to hear from more from like Kyt's department, from that side of the game, because it was very interesting. You were saying there, Impetus, about the transcripts. Very great to listen to Kyt talk about it, but also to read up on the sort of the abridged versions of the perspective of quality assurance and the difficulty content when it comes to exotic missions. That was a big highlight for me. No offense to the weapons team, we love hearing from the weapons team, but just having that dynamic from a different side of Bungie, one slice of Bungie that we've not heard from, was really great. Saint, you got anything?
Yeah, I'd kind of just echo the appreciation for, them bringing us on to do PvE, which I had no idea we'd kind of get to where we are at today, because it's been a long time ago now, or a year and a half ago or so now. But if I had never seen the way that Merc and Kyt did their weapon reviews and breakdowns in the first place, that was what really kind of just drove the whole mindset of like, how do we, what truly makes something better, and how we kind of look at like weapons and things like that in the game, and they just like have shaped such the kind of culture within that Massive Breakdown server that still persists so much. Yeah, and Lego and Tony, that they just kind of kept that going for as long as it did. It's kind of I think they said this in the interview, but it is kind of a miracle that they both got hired on, and then the show persisted for as long as it did. I think they're both grateful to see it go on for so long. Yeah, and if anybody from the Raid and Dungeon team is listening to this episode, I know that there have been some raids that have seen some really weird, like early phase design iterations before we got what we eventually got in the game, and I think we would all love to talk about that a little bit someday. Someday.
I wish you guys could have seen Kyt's face as he was talking about stuff. I mean, the man was just beaming from ear to ear. It was so precious. He was so excited to share everything. And again, huge shout out to Bungie for letting him talk about the breadth and depth of the stuff that we were able to for him to talk about specifically. I mean, a lot of approval went into that episode, a lot of behind the scenes stuff there that Merc and Kyt had to take care of and get assurance that they could talk about way more than I think any of us are ever really fully aware. And one last thing before we do go on, Merc was quite sweet and gave a very generous shout out to Autodidaktos right at the end of that episode for his work in making us sound so great. I do want to return the favor and give a shout out to Nettie for her incredible editing work on the show. She had to put through a lot of edits after we recorded the episode. Merc and Kyt had to go back and listen to it to make sure that they didn't spoil stuff or didn't step outside of what they were given permission to. So she had to make a lot of last minute changes and adjustments and did a great job. So I wanted to return that favor as well. We've been blessed with some really amazing folks to work in front of the scenes and then behind the scenes on making everything come together. So let's talk about those developer insights, right?
Yeah, of course. Again, as we've been saying, definitely go and check out the episode and the breakdowns. There's a ton of great information and insight. And yeah, of course, thank you, Bungie, for allowing this to happen. So the big, for PvE, the big highlight is definitely something that we've known for a while. Since our last...
three of us. Yes.
Yeah.
Since our last episode with Chris and Rodney, the developer interview episode, we did get to speak to Chris after the fact, just to talk about a few things that weren't covered, and this was one of them, and that was the double special bug fix. So they are fixing a bug that provided an inflated amount of heavy ammo when running a double special build. So they aren't nerfing double special builds at this time, but they are keeping an eye on it, and I suppose the general impression I got there as well, they're just keeping an eye on the economy when it comes to ammunition as well, including heavy. So lads, how are we feeling about that one?
I think what gets me about this is that people have read this or listened to this episode, and the reaction has been double special is dead.
Yeah.
No. What? No, man.
Boy, do I
It's-
wish. Boy, do I
yeah.
wish.
I get the idea that because of the way that the kill counters work, there's a lot of detailed information on this out there, so we won't get super into the weeds. But essentially, you're working towards a more frequent spawn rate of heavy ammo bricks based on like how you're getting kills, right? And there's kind of a lot of things that contribute to the rate at which it spawns and things like that. And there's also some even variation within that. But Double Special is far from dead, and I am very confident that it will continue to be incredibly popular in meta within the game for seasons to come until it sees more significant changes. And I think that the funniest thing to me about this is that it's seen as like such a weakness, but at the same time, if you're like really thinking through the like balancing of this, how does it possibly make sense that by exchanging your primary weapon for another special weapon, which by its nature does more damage, you should at the same time get more heavy ammo to deal even more damage, right? I just don't understand an argument that was balanced, or that using two special weapons should mean that you get more heavy ammo, because then it's just like, I mean, that was part of the whole steamrolling effect of using a double special loadout, is that you use two special weapons, which again is like just more damage, using a forbearance and a heritage, secession, whatever, and then you're simultaneously getting more ammo for your machine gun, rocket launcher, what have you. It's far from dead, and I think there's a lot of overreaction to this. It's my 2 cents.
Well, if you're using a double special build, of course you should have the negative effect of you're not getting as much ammo dropping for you. That's the whole point. Yes, it's a powerful build. I know, Impetus, you want that kind of type of setup not to exist, which is fair enough. That's your kind of perspective of this particular issue. But like, yeah, a complete agreement with Saint here, where the overreaction has just been like, I was expecting some sort of like reaction to it, but I was not expecting a lot of people taking it far out of proportion here. And to be honest, like I was looking at today, actually, I was looking at the reserves for trace rifles, and it just made more kind of sense for me to build more into reserve mods for these things, because they are really great for ammo efficiency. And that's the double special build that I do build into. It's like a fusion rifle plus a trace rifle plus a rocket launcher. So definitely not dead. Impetus, how are you vibing with this?
So to quote Merc specifically, he said that the reason that they don't ever want to prevent you from equipping two special weapons is to allow for unique setups. And he did cite specifically trace rifles, but he also said setups like Forerunner, taking advantage of that as kind of being your longer range, heavy hitting special, and then presumably using something like a grenade launcher or a trace rifle in the energy slot, plus your heavy weapon of choice. And I get that. I definitely get that. Trace rifles, I like trace rifles a lot, and a lot of their perk pools are kind of designed for minor, really efficient minor ad clearing or major killing, which, they have flexibility there. I don't want to see that changed, but at the same time, those are really specific cases, and I'm not sure that should be holding up pretty much the usage of all primary weapons entirely in the end game for hyper efficient players who want to put out as much damage as possible. So, and especially with the changes that we'll touch on in just a moment coming to sniper rifles, I'm just very wary of special weapon tweaking going forward. Heavy weapons are fine. This isn't going to hurt machine guns. Definitely not going to hurt rocket launchers. Linears, I think, are still there for your total damage output, which will be relevant for, I think, more content like master raids. It's not the answer I wanted. I've known this is the answer that's been coming, which is why I've been raging against double special for a while now. But I think at this point I'm probably just going to be working on using exotic primaries only. I'll unlock a few legendary primaries for crafting, but won't be chasing a lot of legendary PvE rolled primaries kind of going forward at this point. There's just no point. That's really all I can say. Like, it's not a good use of my time. I can do much more with two special weapons, which does not satisfy me, unfortunately.
All right. Well, we have some additional things that we'll just quickly go through here. Now, we talked about, Merc talked about snipers here. They're still underperforming, but they prefer a slower movement with snipers because they functionally have unlimited range. They don't want to buff them up too high. It will cause that kind of Destiny 1 style sat at the back of the map with an icebreaker. If they become strong, then they will invalidate a large number of the of other weapons and activity encounters. But they did say likely another pass at them after Season 22. Small buff to pulse rifles coming, 10 to 15%, projected for Season 23, so the season after the next. However, they may change the sort of cadence with these updates and move them up to mid-season 22. And we've got a weapons article, which is dropping before season 22's launch, which isn't that far away. By the time this episode goes out, it'll be a week. So presumably the week this episode comes out is when the weapons article comes out. And finally, just from Kit's point of view, we did get confirmation that the Wicked Implement Catalyst drop is indeed guaranteed at Tier 7 Deep Dive and is RNG in lower tiers. Obviously, the higher the tier, it will give a higher chance.
Good to know. Good to know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right, Saint. I think this one probably makes a little bit of sense considering you share the class here. What do we get this week?
Yeah, they started off on a pretty sentimental note, and I think this is something that has been on everybody's mind for the past couple of months or so. We're talking about Commander Zavala, specifically the future of his character and role in the game. Keith David will now be taking over the role of Zavala in the final shape and beyond. Lance Reddick's existing lines in-game will remain untouched. I think this is something that people are really glad to see because there have been a few cases in the past in Destiny where voice actors were replaced, and from the point of view of continuity, they would go back and re-record old voice lines. For those of you who were not super involved in the beginning, Peter Dinklage was actually the original voice of the Ghost, but you can't find any Ghost lines from Peter Dinklage anymore because obviously he's been replaced for a long time. And those lines were re-recorded. And I think that was okay, but in this specific case, it's really nice to see kind of the legacy, right, of Lance sticking around in the game. And I think that this landed really well with a lot of people. If you don't know Keith David is, you probably actually do know who he is. You just don't know his name because he's voiced just a litany of characters over the years. I'd have to go pull up his IMDb, but I remember just hearing a quote from somebody the other day because he was the voice of the president on Rick and Morty, right? I mean, he's just been all over media, movies, TV shows for past few decades.
If you played previous Bungie games, Halo.
Yeah.
He is the Arbiter. That's the big kind of cross between Destiny and obviously Halo with Keith David. But yeah.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's going to sit here and say that he didn't kill that role. Yeah.
Like this is like the best thing they could do. I think we all wanted Lance Reddick to just remain untouched. His approach and his delivery when it came to Commander Zavala to be just left as it is. I was certainly thinking that at the time during his passing, but a couple months on, it's like, yeah, they're still maintaining Lance's positioning in the game. And Destiny was a very important franchise for him. We always seen clips and kind of videos of him playing the game. He was a warlock. that always made me chuckle just watching him play warlock rather than his resident class. But yeah, absolutely great decision here by all those that have made it.
All right. Well, with that said, let's move on to the other stuff from the TWID from the 10th. Next up on the list here, we have the Exotic Mission Rotator. This is something that has been announced for a while, and they came in and gave a lot of additional details about like how the loot and progression and things like that are going to work. I'll start us off here with just kind of a general outline, and we'll bounce around for the various missions because there's a lot of details around how the loot is going to work and all that. All exotic weapons attached to their exotic mission will now become craftable. That includes Dead Man's Tale from Presage Week 1, Dead Messenger from Vox Obscura, which would be Week 2, and Revision 0 from Seraph Shield, which, of course, is already craftable, but you'll be able to craft it if you had not picked that up in Season of the Seraph. Each mission features a normal as well as a legendary difficulty, and then each mission will feature a pool of legacy seasonal rewards, armor and weapons that you can craft kind of, from its respective season or themed around its respective season. So, for example, here, Presage, you would have to have Beyond Light or at least Season of the Haunted, and the weapons that you can find in there are Nezarek's Whisper, Bump in the Night, Tears of Contrition, Hollow Denial, Firefright, Without Remorse, and then also the opulent weapons, as well as those seasonal ones, Ostringer, the new version of Drang, Beloved, and Callous Mini Tool, as well as the Eidolon Pursuant armor set from that season. These are all craftable weapons, so presumably there will be a chance for them to drop, or you could use your deep sight imprinting on these. I obviously hand cannons are way back up the mix. Ostringer being a very classic one, even though it doesn't have the most insane perk pool, it's still a very solid weapon. Sidearms have been popping off recently. Drang is going to be another really good one. So there's definitely some good weapons to pick up here. Hollow Denial too. Man, it's just absolute favorite of mine. I don't know how many kills I have on that Tracer Rifle at this point, but a ridiculous amount. Except for Bump in the Night. You don't just. We're just not even going to go there. We're just going to leave that one in the back. But we have a lot more weapons coming with some of our other missions. What do we got for Vox Obscura, Court?
Wait, what's wrong with Bump in the Night?
I was going to say, hold on now. Somebody didn't look at Court's rocket launcher infographic
Hello?
here. That has a very exciting column 3
if you're
perk.
looking for a nice demo frenzy rocket launcher, there you go. But if you're looking for a chill clip rocket launcher, don't.
We don't mention chill clip on rocket launchers. Not in this podcast. Yes, Bump in the Night definitely a highlight if you can't, or if you don't have access to Cold Comfort for the dungeon. But if you're after a stasis aggressive frame, there you go. Yes, Vox Obscura, which requires ownership of the Witch Queen, or if you've previously had Season of the Risen, will be bringing the Season 16 weapons. So Explosive Personality, Recurrent Impact, Under Your Skin, Sweet Sorrow, Thoughtless, and Peace of Mind, in addition to the armor set of Tusked Allegiance. There's no additional weapons here, unlike the Presage and the Fallen Seraph Shield, so it's just those 6, and to be honest, they're all pretty much bangers. We were kind of raving about them back in Season 16 a year and a half ago, so like absolute great weapons to see brought back. That was one of my biggest complaints when we shifted from one annual content season, or the annual content to another with Witch Queen to Lightfall, is that we lost all these great weapons, including the rest, like Season 19 and 17, but Season 16 were big highlights, and it's like, can we even recommend these weapons, because there's no way you can actually get them, but now you can, so great
Perfect
stuff. Impetus, we have Seraph Shield up next.
Yes, Seraph Shield will be coming back. That does require ownership of the Witch Queen or Season of the Seraph. You'll be able to get the Season 19 weapons. That's Fire and Forget, Tripwire Canary, Disparity, Path of Least Resistance, Judgment of Kelgarath, and Retrofit Escapade, plus the Ikelos weapons, the version 3, I should say, of the Ikelos weapons. So that's the Ikelos hand cannon, the Ikelos shotgun, the Ikelos sniper rifle, and last but certainly not least, the Ikelos SMG, plus the Warmind's Avatar armor set. So lots and lots of good stuff in there as well. I mean, really, all of these weapon sets are really good. There's always something to chase here. So, yes, if you are a newer player and you did not get to get that stuff, you came in with Lightfall. Next season, you got a lot of stuff to chase. Start chasing, I should say, as they go through the weekly rotation there. Do go back and listen to our episodes on these weapon sets from many months ago for some of these especially, as you'll be able to get them, and they've aged quite well for all of these, actually, now that I look at these. Yeah, there's some really, really good stuff here that I still use actively. So rip to the Season 18, that's Season of the Plunger Weapons. Maybe they'll get added in the future. We don't know. Unsure what they would be attached to thematically, but just as a going forward kind of heads up here, exotic missions that enter the rotator in the future will feature the same reward behavior. So right now for this year, we've got Avalon so far and Whetstone. We may have some future exotic missions. Those will join the rotator in the year of the final shape. Excalibur from Avalon is already craftable, so that won't change, or I guess it will probably get a perk update. Wicked Implement, though, from this season is not craftable and presumably will become craftable. So that'll be interesting to see what gets added to that when Whetstone joins the rotator next year. The rewards, again, we have normal or legendary difficulty. Your first completion of the week awards 1 deep sight pattern for the attached exotic, and each completion awards an intrinsic upgrade for the attached exotic. Normal and legendary versions will have a separate weekly reward lockout, so there is a reason to be doing both of those difficulties each week. The legendary difficulty only will have a catalyst upgrade awarded for their respective exotic, and then the weekly mission rewards will give you 1 guaranteed deep sight pattern that has not had its pattern unlocked already, which is fantastic. You'll also get 1 armor piece that has not already been obtained on that class in a knockout system. If all of the weapon patterns and armor have been obtained for that respective exotic mission, you will instead be awarded a random world drop. On every completion, you will receive an additional weapon from the exotic mission's weapon pool. This weapon will have no knockout or guaranteed deep sight behavior. The weapon could roll with deep sight, but it would be on a random percentage chance. There is a weekly challenge that has the same armor and weapon pool as the exotic mission, which is in rotation. Challenge rewards output at pinnacle power and prioritizes the rewards in the following order. 1 guaranteed deep sight pattern that has not had its pattern unlocked. If the weapon patterns have all been unlocked, 1 armor piece that has not been obtained based on your current class. And if all weapon patterns and armor have been obtained, 1 random weapon or armor. Lots of information. Very happy that they're put this much thought into the exotic mission rotator, I guess, as opposed to just slapping a bunch of the old missions in there and then having them cycle in and out week over week. Very happy and excited for players who did not have access to these weapons and armor originally to be able to go grab them. I'm looking forward to my craftable Dead Man's Tale. My craftable Dead Messenger is going to be interesting because that catalyst gives you turnabout. So I'm curious to see what else they put on there. That could be a really exciting one. But very, very happy for all of that. And again, if you're a newer player, you got a lot to look forward to. A lot to look forward to next season.
Mm-hmm. I wonder, what are they going to put on that DMT update?
Yeah, I mean, I only use that for PvP. I know it has, Subsistence and Vorpal on it right now. That's kind of the 2 PvE perks, unless I'm forgetting something else.
No, yeah, I definitely think Vorpal is like the go, Vorpal and Subsistence were like the go-tos for sure.
Yeah.
You put a little Frenzy on there. Poof. It's pretty hot.
Yeah, Frenzy's good on pretty much everything. Kinetic Tremors, I think, is the one that a lot of people are hoping for. That'd be very powerful.
Enhanced Kinetic Tremors? 4-shot proc? What's going on? Even 5-shot proc would be huge.
Yeah, you got 14 in the mag? That's, yeah. That'd be good. That'd be exciting.
Although I've already got Revision Zero crafted, I am looking forward to playing Seraph's Shield again. So we only got that for, 10 weeks? 9 weeks? Because it wasn't for the full season.
Yes.
Whereas, Volks Obscura and Presage were up for pretty much the entire year during their respective annual content. But I'm really pretty happy with their kind of the way that they want to deliver kind of content. All these weapons, great to see again. And very curious what they're going to put on Dead Messenger, because I was not expecting that as a crafted weapon, but here we are.
It's got to be Disruption Break, right? I mean, with the elemental stuff, that seems like a pretty obvious one. That'd make it too devastating in PvP.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be tough.
Yeah, I think that would be.
I feel like.
Yeah.
Disruption Break is the one where you get the bonus to kinetic damage by like 40%, right?
50%.
50?
Yeah, slap Disruption Break on that.
5-0.
Screw them.
They were like, hey, we heard you like to blint.
Yeah.
Now that Explosive Personality's back, let's really up the ante and show you what Explosive Personality could be like.
You thought I was bad before. Oh, brother.
Yeah.
All right. You guys ready to jump into the state of the game here?
Not really, but let's get it over with, right?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think that we're really going to we're really not going to be talking about it a lot as far as like the whole Crucible maps thing goes. So like, let's just get that out of the way immediately. We're just like not here to talk about the Crucible map resource allocation like debate. I understand people are frustrated. It's just not part of the game that like we're invested in. And I don't know. That's pretty much all I have to say about that. Like, I get that people are frustrated. We're just not here to talk about that. It's not the part of the game that we play. We're not going to focus on it. We're just going to try to focus basically on the positives that we can, some negatives in the middle there. But there's been plenty of discourse on that in plenty of coverage already. So I don't think that we really need to dog on that or Gambit. I don't know. Just Gambit's Gambit. So, let's just jump into what is going to impact our side of the game, starting off with Vanguard medals. Vanguard Ops and Nightfall in Season 22 are going to get some medal systems similar to Guardian Games medals. They contribute to scoring, so I think this is going to impact your Nightfall plays a little bit more, especially when you're going for those 100k scores, et cetera, allowing players to gain more of a higher score playing in a normal way and not necessarily having to kind of work your way around and farm specific things, trying to get higher scores. Just playing with effective strategies and synergizing as a team should kind of work more towards these medals and allow you to hit those scores and those reputation multipliers a little bit easier. And they also mentioned that there's going to be some new medals coming in Season 22, so not really sure what those are going to be, but it'll definitely feel nice to have a little bit of a easier time hitting the thresholds on some of those Nightfall scoring ones, especially earlier on when you're running master versions, and sometimes it can feel like a big drag trying to hit those really high scores, and just coming just short is an incredibly unfortunate feeling. I mean, I don't know, any thoughts, feelings on Vanguard medals getting expanded a little bit here, lads?
Great to see that they're that they're adding that finally. Because I do remember back in like Rise of Iron days when we had that kind of similar setup, and it was pretty strange not to see that brought forward into Destiny 2. But yeah, that's fair. Like, yeah, the point you're making there, Saint, about you get 909 or 99,000 out of the 100 you need for that pinnacle. Not that we're really chasing pinnacles at the moment with the power grind system being kind of.
Some of us are.
Okay, fair enough. But getting that 99,000, you're like, well, it's like we completely slayed out that entire strike, and it's like there's nothing else we could really do without cheesing it with like revives. So this like system being put in is very welcome. If you've got a team, the three of us are fairly competent when it comes to Nightfalls most of the time. But if we're slaying out, we've got our builds just completely spewing out those orbs of power, then yeah, like you're going to get that 100k. So yeah, great change here. Great change.
Love to know that I'm playing well with a little metal.
Speaking of activities, we've got seasonal activities, which they kind of laid out here. So the team has been focusing on more varied and frequent seasonal activities, such as battlegrounds. These will make their way into Vanguard playlists and eventually serve as new additions to Nightfall and Grandmaster playlists. And they said that there's going to be more battlegrounds, plural, for GMs in Season 22 and Season 23. And I know, speaking for myself, I do like Battlegrounds as a GM. I know it's quite hit or miss when it comes to Battlegrounds. I think, Impetus, you've kind of talked about this before. What's your vibe when it comes to Battlegrounds as a Grandmaster?
They are extremely fun and challenging to play through. They are absolutely terrible when it comes to farming the Nightfall weapon of the week. That is my one complaint. It's a pretty big complaint, given that they haven't mentioned anything in regards to changing how we acquire those weapons. You are able, of course, to get the ciphers. I suppose that's the most recent change, and then spend them on an extra roll of the weapon of the week. But yeah, if there is a weapon that you want to chase that particular week and you're on a battleground, chances are it's going to be easily half an hour with the average team for the average GM player per run, and that stacks up very quickly. So yeah, you got to really optimize your time throughout a week if you want to go do that, which I don't think we need to get into a discussion of what's the optimal time for what all GMs should be. It varies, of course, but they're definitely not things that you can cheese quite as easily, and that's, we're there to farm for adept weapons, of course. I want adept weapons to be worth the grind, but right now we're in a spot, I feel like, with Battlegrounds in particular, where they're a lot harder than they should be for loot that I don't particularly care about. Braytech Osprey this season being a good case. When that debuted, that was with the Psionic Battleground, which was a lot of fun to go do, and then I never wanted to do it again to farm for loot anymore. So that's my stance. How about you, Saint?
Yeah, I enjoy the mix-up and the challenge. I remember, like going to the moon one for the first time and feeling like we were really like hunkered down. They're giving you ammo crates, which is really kind of like mixing up the flow of things there. And I would agree that I generally enjoy them and think that they're a good challenge. But yeah, like syncing it up with a week with a new weapon that you really want to chase, and those runs are taking you 26 ish minutes a piece, it's just not that's not it. I'm probably going to do 2 or 3 and then just call it, which is tough. I mean, the focusing at Zavala has definitely gotten better, which like helps alleviate that a little bit. But yeah, it's sometimes running through a Battleground GM only to get really poor roll on the new seasonal weapon is tough. It does not feel satisfying, and I'm really looking forward to Warden's Law coming in next season. I feel like this could land in a really good way, given where hand cannons are going to be at, and I'm going to want to be farming that thing. So I'm really hoping it doesn't land on the hardest GM of the season when it rolls out that first week. But we shall see. We shall see.
You know it will. You know it will.
What is a battleground or something that we haven't? I'm trying to think. I don't think they've said what the GM rotation is going to be next season, right? I don't think there's been any mention of that. So I'm trying to think of what the, what's the worst GM
could they do one of the original Battlegrounds from Chosen? Would any of those? I mean, it would be brutal, especially the 2 Nessus ones. Those would be a lot of fun to do, but I'm trying to think.
I think
Nessus Battleground coming back. That'd be interesting.
Because Nessus needs more content, of course, right?
Naturally.
It's only making up a third of the Strike playlist at this point.
Yeah, that could. Yeah, those could be an interesting, like the
or
original
the Europa one.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, the Europa one would be a nightmare.
Yeah, we'll calm down there, Satan.
I mean,
we'll cut this part from the.
I mean, we don't have. They haven't made any more battlegrounds after Seraph, so
Right.
it's possibility that they might be including the original Conqueror, sort of chosen battlegrounds. So, interesting. You've actually really piqued my interest because some of them are just like, oh, why? Okay.
Well, shifting over to something that's not quite as exciting, the armor set rewards. We've gotten confirmation that we will not be getting a new armor set for the ritual playlists during the year of Lightfall. They've confirmed that they're no longer going to make one for every expansion. This was something that Luke Smith had said years and years ago in an interview, I think prior to Beyond Light coming out, that they were committed to this, and it seems like a lot of players latched onto that, so it is what it is. I don't think we really need to talk about that. They did say, though, that a new set will be coming out for Final Shape, and that Trials will be getting a new armor set next season, Season 22. Did they say anything about Iron Banner? Is Iron Banner not getting a new... Is that... I don't know where we're falling on that, if they haven't confirmed whether or not Iron Banner's getting one for this year.
Yeah, I don't think they mentioned that.
Okay, that typically does happen in the
post.
final season, so that's maybe they're just waiting to say whether or not we'll get one until we're in Season 22 and awaiting Season 23. But we know for sure that Trials is getting an armor set next season, and that we are not getting a Ritual Playlist armor set for this year, the year of Lightfall. So, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, it's like, it's nice. Trials, it's a game stuff. It's getting its own armor, and it's kind of funny to look back on this because I'm sure that people have not really been farming. Nobody's farming ritual playlists for the armor because historically it's like not dropping with very high stat points or as like a source in general, right? Is I mean, my impression, my experience. I don't know if there's like a lot of data to back that up, but they have not really been the best looking armor sets, and they usually are not dropping with great stats. And that is not what's going to drive somebody to farm out Crucible for hours on end. Like a new Randy's throwing knife is coming back, and it's got a massive 12x12 perk pool. There's a new Void auto rifle, and it has a massive perk pool. Right? These are like that's motivating me to like go reset my Vanguard rank a couple times or reset my Crucible rank a couple times, and just be grinding these playlists in kind of the down parts of the season. And it's always kind of frustrating to see like Eververse is always getting new multiple armor sets like every season, and then to see this like cut off. But like, I mean, Eververse makes money and like nobody cares about these armor sets anyways, and nobody's farming for them. So it's not hard to see like why they would do this, even if you're like, the frustration remains of like, Eververse is getting the attention. It's like, well, people pay money for that, so they're gonna keep investing in it. And like, same for Trials. Like, people play the game. Like, people that are really into PvP, like Trials is a pinnacle experience for them. Like, that's like the focal point. So it makes sense that was be getting the attention. I don't know. Court, feelings, thoughts, opinions.
I don't have any feelings because I like those armor sets just didn't look good. They didn't drop with any great stats. There was no like additional mod socket or anything like that. It was just normal armor, like WoW drops. So I just not really interested. I think a lot of people, and I partially included myself, was yes, they already communicated this before where they said, yes, we're going to, this is not like a quote direct, but they did say we're going to do one for every expansion. And the community rightfully did point that out. For this year, it's like, hold on a minute, where's the Lightfall set? But yes, at the end of the day, it's not something I really care about. But it's the sort of principle of, like, they did mention this. This was something that they communicated before, that this is something they do or they will make, and that's no longer the case. But I'll talk about the general kind of the vibe from this article once we've kind of covered everything. So next up, we've got something related to the seasonal structure. So they're shaking up the seasonal paradigm to subvert player expectations and make each season feel unique. More is coming during the showcase. They're going to kind of show us what's to come, but expect shakeups in seasons 22 and 23. real quick here, I suppose. Yeah, I think this season certainly felt a little bit different to previous seasons. Something that we'll talk about next episode with the sort of review of season 21. The type of content that we've been receiving is obviously deep dives came with season 21. That's definitely something that I've been very interested in engaging with, both from a difficulty standpoint, but also just kind of flexing out my builds and even kind of rewards as well, because you do kind of get your reign with rewards at the end. Maybe not so much, they're not, some of them aren't great. The seasonal weapons for this season haven't been like the best compared to, like we talked about, season 16 and like 19. Those are big highlights, but yeah, deep dive certainly a great introduction to this game. How are we feeling with the seasonal structure?
I'm going to save my thoughts for next week's episode on this. Okay. I guess in a nutshell, meh. I don't feel strongly about it in either direction. So,
yeah, I think that there is like some subtle stuff, like the way that our current season was having its like kind of upgrade path in your like triumph screen, and those count towards your like seasonal triumphs for your big pile of bright dust. That's cool. But that's like the biggest shakeup to me. So I'm trying to hold out a little bit and see, what's going to happen next season. Because it seems like they were kind of like testing the waters a little bit with that. And I'm hoping, when they say, subverting expectations, I am, I'm trying to keep an open mind, right? Upcoming seasons 22, 23 and see what they do. But yeah, nothing super crazy. Like I just said, we can do kind of a season rounding out episode here in the next few episodes. I don't know, Court, any thoughts before we go to quality of life stuff?
No, again, probably the same vibe as you, Saint, and also Impetus. I think it's the actual seasonal structure, the narrative's been, I don't know, it's just, compared to Witch Queen years, it just feels, I don't know, just a bit, I don't know how to kind of communicate it, but it just feels odd. It's probably the prerogative word here. But, I do want to keep an open mind to seasons 22 and 23. I feel like seasons 20 and 21 were still following last year's kind of the sameness, which is the whole complaint I think a lot of us were having with the seasonal structure. So seasons 22 and 23 do have to kind of knock out the park here when we lead up to final shape. Like, they need to be pretty much, very different to the first half of this annual content.
Yeah. I'm also just very weary because the last time I heard the phrase subvert expectations, it was coming from the directors of the Game of Thrones TV show, and that does not spark joy. So I'm hoping they learned from D&D over there how to do that and how to not do that. No Brand the Broken, please.
Okay.
All right,
but it makes for a good story, Saint. That's what you just don't understand. Who has a better story, right?
I'm no writer, I'll say that. I am no writer, so who's to say, really? Moving on to some highlights, though.
Let's get into some good stuff, some positive reception here. Long requested feature is coming in season 22. You can favorite shaders and ornaments and emotes.
Let's go.
Not only that, the hits keep coming. Stasis aspects and fragments. Remember those? Gosh, I hated that whole thing. Those are getting moved over to LC Bray as a vendor system, which will be similar to Ikora with the light subclass. These will cost 25,000 Glimmer to purchase your aspects and your fragments instead of being tied to weekly lockouts. Wow. Remember that? Remember that, dude? Holy cow. This is going to be great. Yeah, we're not getting that time back, are we, boys? Oh, boy. Transmats are now going to be unlocks rather than consumables. Sweet. Cool. And we're also getting a resources tab in collections, which will show all currencies, upgraded materials, and engrams appropriately categorized, with information on how to acquire. Huge change. I think I speak for all three of us when I say, let's go. This is what we love to see. Real, true quality of life upgrades. Better late than never for some of these. Goodness sakes. Man, I hated that stasis stuff so much.
A year and a half later.
It's here. We're taking it.
No, two and a half years later.
Yeah. Gosh, the dark days.
Yeah, and considering that was per character, not per account, you had to do it, or we had to do it for Hunter, and then again for Titan, and then again for Warlock, and oh boy, yeah, that was a lot of time dedicated to getting those aspects and fragments, and hopefully this is like maybe a little kind of hint towards, stasis is maybe getting looked at in the future, as we've kind of talked about in previous episodes, and we'll talk about probably later on in this episode. Stasis just feeling a bit kind of underwhelming at the moment across the board. So if this means more players are getting access to stasis, especially if you never bothered to do it on your second and third class, then there you go. Glimmer is all you need. A lot of glimmer. But glimmer is all you need.
Whew.
Yeah, I think there's still
go ahead.
Hunter that I didn't ever unlock because I did
come on.
2 characters, and then I was like going through the Hunter, and I was just like, I'm done. I'm done here, man.
You mean stasis melee quest requirement? Oh man, that was awesome on Warlock. That was so cool. I love that part.
What was the? There was one of the quests had you to do like something stasis focus, but to get past it, you could do a finisher. Was that the stasis
because
melee?
Some of the finishers like inherit your element.
Yeah, like
that was the melee quest.
So God.
And I was a new player at that time, so I didn't have those specific. No. I was just sitting there on Warlock, and I made my Titan for Beyond Light because that's when we were getting the quote unquote new player tutorial. Immediately regretted that. And I was sitting there and I'm like, oh, this stinks. I just punched that dude across the room and he didn't die on my stasis Titan. This is gonna take forever.
Big time. What did they do to us? Energy,
Sweet, man. Oh, we're so past that, though. We're so back. All right, let's talk about our Sandbox updates. Let's talk about the final set of Strand aspects that are coming to our 3 characters. We don't have descriptions. We just have the names for these. Court, what do you think the new Hunter Strand aspect is going to be about?
Well, it's called Whirling Maelstrom. So initially I thought, that's probably related to the super. When you do your heavy attack, you do that twirl with the rope. But I don't think they dedicate an aspect purely to a super without some like additional kind of buffs to some other things. So my thinking is related to the melee. I mean, that could be also the heavy attack for the super as well. But the melee, considering that you can essentially have that going around the room. And hitting ads, so that's kind of the vibe that I'm thinking. It's something it's connecting with each ad, and then it's it already does like a sever effect, so unraveling or something like that, or something related to that. So it's very interesting.
You could do a circle with a grapple, right? You can grapple around in a circle.
Oh, yes, and I do that quite often.
Oh my gosh,
we're going crazy with it.
What if you turn into like a blade and you just swing around the room and any enemies you hit while you're grappling is
like a tornado or maelstrom here. That would be very interesting.
Oh, that'd be so funny.
That's better than what I came up with. Because I often do that. As I'll put a tango up and then I'll string to it and you go around it. Like infinitely, you can keep it up. You do have to kind of move your either your joystick or your camera just to keep the momentum going. But it's really fun and great.
That'd be awesome.
Mr. Titan, what are we feeling with this aspect for the Strand Titans?
Yeah, we have Banner of War. And I am thinking that this is going to be something like the Bastion fragment from Void. So void that fragment gives you a void overshield while you are standing behind your barricade. Tall wall, small wall, either one. You'll slowly regenerate and maintain an overshield while you're sitting there. I'm thinking that this one is going to be something. I don't think that they would go defensively with Woven of Mail because it's called Banner of War. I'm thinking more like while you're standing behind your barricade, you'll gain Sever or Unravel. Maybe kind of like a more offensive version of Bastion, basically, which I think would be really cool because they don't like Titans just don't really have a super strong access to either of those verbs right now. I don't think. So I would love to see, especially with the way that it's Sever, right? That's getting the buff that we'll talk about a little bit later on. Yeah, I would love to see something like that, or even just Unravel rounds, which has been a ton of fun this season. Strand Soldier, when you get Woven Mail, you also gain Unravel rounds for your weapons. It's just kind of like a nice extra little background, damage bonus on your Strand weapons. So that's my hope. If it was really Woven Mail, I think that would just kind of be too strong. I don't know how else to say that. That's just so strong. If they just did Bastion, but it's Woven Mail instead of Overshield.
Just to interject here, there's only, outside of artifacts and all that, because we've had a few in prior, like this season and last season, but there's only one thing that gives you Unravel rounds, and that's Thread of Propagation. So your theory may be correct. That could be like an Unravel round kind of provider, because there's a very distinct lack of that for at least.
Yeah,
for,
it's that one fragment.
Stunning.
And then it's final warning, the exotic sidearm. You have to land a full burst to unravel targets.
So that's a form of unravel. It's not unravel rounds itself. You can provide.
That's a good distinction. Yep, yeah. You're right. Yep.
So like volatility and volatile rounds, it's the same here, where the actual ability of unravel and volatile don't give you champion stunning. It's the rounds part. It's the suffix of rounds that gives you the champion counter. So, yeah, very interesting.
Mm-hmm. That'll be cool. All right, Warlocks. We've got Weave Walk is the name of our final aspect. Now, Weave typically does involve something with threadlings based on the other two aspects, the language of those two aspects. So Weaver's Call is tied to spawning threadlings when you cast your Rift. So I hope I'm wrong, because I would like to see the Warlock kind of branch out beyond the threadling. I would also like to see the other two classes get a little bit more access to threadlings, especially with the buff that they're getting next season. But yeah, Weave Walk, so potentially something to do with threadlings while we're in motion, which would be nice, I suppose. But don't really have anything else, any other conjecture to go off of here. But those are the final strand aspects. We will get more info soon on those. I believe for this season's aspects, did they give us a description in an article prior to the season? Am I remembering that right?
I think we did. It was either like the days leading up to,
or is it in the TWID or something like that?
Yeah, because they gave us the names like they did here, so it gave us like that. Oh, let's speculate what they all mean, and then I'm sure we knew before, like ahead of time.
Okay.
So I think it just when. I'm not sure if it was just like quite a basic description of each, like Hunter had you get a decoy, and then that kind of vibe. But the way I'm reading the state of the game, it was stay tuned for more info as we get closer to the launch of the season. So
okay, perfect. So we'll get to find out what these do a little bit very shortly. So that's great. Nice. Other Sandbox updates. We already know a little bit about this, but they are also confirming some new stuff. We are getting new weapon subfamilies. They will be introducing entirely new weapon subfamilies with the final shape. The showcase will show off some of these in action, so we'll get to speculate on some sweet footage, hopefully. And then they also say, and I quote, some other unexpected additions to D2's arsenal yet to come. So we, of course, knew that Warden's Law is coming back next season. That is going to be a new subfamily that we've already been given a little bit of a description of what that will look like in some previous articles. But we do have some more stuff on the horizon with the final shape to keep an eye out on. Very excited. So yeah, let's speculate. Let's keep an eye out when you're watching the showcase. If you're able to look for stuff look for some weapons that might be doing some things we haven't seen before.
A hand cannon that's a wave frame.
Yeah, everything gets a wave frame now.
It's all on the table.
Sniper
rocket
wave
launcher,
frame.
but it's a wave frame.
They might do that. They might do that.
They really have been hitting a lot of new archetypes when we look back at the past, I don't know, 3 seasons? You know, this year-ish, you know?
I think...
well, go ahead.
I think a lot of us were under the impression that we're trying to combine a lot of the archetypes we saw with like hand cannons. The 150s were merged into 140s, but no, they're definitely adding more. And in fact, we've got a new hand cannon archetype coming up, so it's neutralized. It's normalized back to 0 instead of the -1 that we had with hand cannons.
Yeah, very exciting stuff.
Speaking of hand cannons, we do have some season 22 weapons preview. We've actually discussed this a few times in previous episodes. But yeah, hand cannons are getting their buffs. The reload bonus plus the damage bonus to minors and elites combatants. So yeah, looking forward to some more Sunshot and Malfeasance explosions. They'll obviously be getting the damage bonus plus the reload bonuses as well. But highlights for legendary weapons, we've got Posterity, which we've been talking about a lot, as Zalo's Bane, Nation of Beasts very recently with Last Wish crafting, and of course Fatebringer. Fatebringer's just getting even more powerful. We've got Touch of Malice buffs, which is great to see. It's a very unique gun. Really curious what they're going to do for Touch of Malice. We've also got sword changes and the sword guard buffs coming up. Looking forward to kind of dusting off some of the swords. Highlights like Bequest, Heart Shadow, and Lament. And we've got perk buffs to Bipod, Envious Assassin, and Under Over. And we'll get a full breakdown coming in an article before Season 22's release. I mentioned this earlier in the episode. That's probably the same week this episode goes out.
Mm-hmm. Sword stuff, did Chris bring that to attention when he was in the interview with Vivian, or was it Rodney that we first said that they were going to look at changing up the sword meta? I can't remember. Because we've known about it for a while, right? Am I crazy?
I think because they've
been waiting for them to talk about it.
I think whenever the weapons team have been on like TWIDs and various like articles of weapons, they've always mentioned something about we've got swords are on the to-do list as well. So it might have actually been back in our first interview, at least the foundational of like we're aware swords are a bit meh at the moment, but we're working on that in the background. So yeah,
cool.
Big highlight actually. I'm curious to how all that works out.
I'm really holding on for Bipod to get under whatever it was. I think we said 25% would be like in the discussion, and 20% would like put it in the meta. Or like kind of definitively put it as meta, and Under Over too. Like I already think Envious Assassin is good, so I'm not really sure what they're going to do there. But also, it's like, how can they buff Under Over when adaptive munitions already exists? Like, what are they going to do to that?
I mean, speculation. There, we don't have. So we have stasis over shields in the game, right? We have overshield sources from quite a few things. We have Repulsor Brace that specifically talks about Void Overshields. That's a weapon perk that can proc a Void Overshield. I would love to see a perk that does lean into the stasis overshield. So if they wanted to make Under Over another stasis perk, I mean, it would the proccing conditions would need to be touched. Obviously, I'm not saying that it would just be an easy copy paste job. It's never that easy, but I would love to see something kind of bring that up, because stasis overshields are in the game and they've been outclassed in a lot of ways. And basically, what I'm trying to say is, please buff stasis.
Yeah, actually, that's a good point. So was it this season they buffed or they changed how Stasis Overshield kind of worked? I know with the nerf to one of the fragments, Rhyme. They changed how that kind of set up to give you that stasis overshield. So yeah, that's also piqued my interest. That they could do something about that, because stasis overshield as a verb of Stasis Sandbox is very underutilized. You can only get it from Whisper of Rhyme, and then we'll also be talking about exotic armor later on. But Icefall Mantle isn't a stasis overshield, but it is a type of overshield that grants you resistance. So interest.
Mm-hmm.
Saint, you wanna get us into the miscellaneous stuff?
Yeah, we're kind of rounding out our discussion here on state of the game before we'll talk about some Sandbox stuff and some armor stuff, and I think that'll pretty much round out the episode for us. So at the end of the state of the game here, they did talk about the narrative for a bit. They're aware of the feedback on Lightfall. They know, right? They know how it went over. They're very aware of the opinions of players and the kind of open-endedness and the lack of direct discussion on our motivations in the story, and quote, loading up this year with important moments designated or designed to capture players' imagination and move the saga forward with each beat. Bungie believes in totality, the year's narrative will set the stage for the final shape in ways that a single story beat never could. Obviously, this is in response to kind of the early seasons of D2 when we were really getting heavily into a seasonal model where a lot of the things in the seasons had nothing to do with the expansion. You could think about, if we go all the way back to Forsaken and then follow that up with like the Drifters season, the Forge season, right? There's some great things that came from these seasons, but none of that stuff had anything to do with what had just happened in Forsaken, right? And I think that this is like a course correction internally. Obviously, we all know how that went over with the original Final Shape story, but obviously the intention was to take that into basically diverge it into basically equally meaningful story beats each season rather than just in the major expansion. Obviously, we talked about this ad nauseum, and I think that the feeling boiled down to the fact that people were left wanting more, and instead of coming out of that original expansion season feeling like really hooked in for the year, it just didn't quite hook people in the same way that something like the Witch Queen could, even if our story beats so far this season have really been strong and really been providing a lot of info. Finally, they did just outright confirm that the final shape in its raid will provide a climactic conclusion to the Light and Darkness saga before we look ahead to what comes next in Destiny 2.
Kind of reassuring. Yes.
Yeah. I think we've pretty much beaten that horse. Any other comments on narrative before we hit the last couple of points here?
Probably a little bit more to say about it when we do our seasonal review, talking about how this season's narrative ties into what we learned, what we did in Lightfall. I'll say my thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think that was a great sentence, and in our script we've got it in bold as well, just to kind of really reaffirm that point. But yeah, that's great that they've kind of came out and said, "What, this is it, this is the end." Yeah. And to be honest, I'm still curious what's going to happen after the Light and Darkness saga. So, which we'll obviously get a little bit more next week with the showcase. They spoke about challenge here, and we were talking about this just before we went live. No power level rise in season 22. So again, if you're at the current pinnacle cap, you will be there again next season, minus the artifact bonus. But they say that they're happy with people, quote, playing at their own pace rather than feeling compelled to chase pinnacles each week. And as a side note here, that they're closely monitoring Battlegrounds in Grandmasters, which we also talked about a few moments ago. But yeah, no power level rise in season 22, lads.
Feels good.
Really good. I think spoke about this last year. That kind of constant grind to get your pinnacle gear up. And to be honest, I was talking about this. I can't remember who it was in a voice chat last week, but this is just such a great change. And yes, the pinnacle grind and the power grind, it does make people play the game, but that's like a mandatory requirement that you have to play the game in order to do the end game content. And it's I don't want to do that every season. So for brand new players who are not as into Destiny, but they can play great Grandmasters or Master Raids, this must be the best thing that they could do for 2 seasons in a row now.
Mm-hmm.
And fantastic, great change, because I want to see more kind of not casual players, not brand new players, but that kind of mid, people who are perfectly capable to do GMs and Master Raids, but they can't because they're always at the end of the season. They've got a week to do that type of content because it took them that amount of time to get up to it, and then that's it. It's scrapped. You're back to base level the next season. So get back up to max rank again. It was an awful system, and I really hope they don't. They just keep doing this for the next couple of seasons. Obviously, with an annual expansion, I think come to expect an increase to the level, but. Can we please end this silly system of power grinding every season?
Yeah.
Well, looks like we have at least an answer in theory to that, which would be the Pathfinder, which is the new tentative system that will replace core ritual bounties that is coming in 2024. The system is being designed to replace bounties with a more rewarding and engaging system. There is a screenshot that's attached. That's pretty much all we have. It's a work in progress, but it looks like they are tweaking that part of the game for possibly Final Shape, possibly the time after Final Shape. We don't know. They did not clarify on that, but they are aware of this frustration and seem to be working on making changes to that. They also have a few new changes coming to the way that Guardians connect with one another. So starting in Season 22, that season will include new ways to experience key in-game moments in D2's history to help get millions of Guardians caught up for the confrontation with the Witness. I feel like this is a pretty obvious one. We're going to get some way to probably view old cutscenes in-game somewhere in order, chronological order is how I'm reading that. I suppose there could be something else they could be doing there, but yeah, it feels like they're probably going to get all those cutscenes that are currently residing on the official Destiny YouTube channel somewhere into the game so that players don't have to go to a third-party source to see what happened a year ago, which I'm all for. So that's coming in Season 22. Season 23, and this is another thing that we've known for some time, we'll see the launch of Fireteam Finder, which is the Destiny Bungie term for LFG, looking for game. That's for in-game content like raids, dungeons, master/GM activities, and more. And then finally, the Final Shape will make big changes to the progression system that will help to connect even more players and remove barriers from keeping friends from taking on the same content together. They did specify that there will be more info on this in the showcase. So, seems like we're getting, the Pathfinder system replaced bounties. Maybe the progression system is getting tied into that. Maybe the changes to the progression system are going to be something separate, but yes, they are streamlining things. They are hopefully allowing for players who are not there for the Red War, Curse of Osiris, all that old content that has been removed from the game, be able to at least experience the key parts of that somewhere in Destiny 2 right now. Very excited for that. You guys have anything you want to say about these changes?
I don't know. Pathfinder looks really totally different and disruptive. Like they're talking about changing these expectations about the seasons. That looks like a brand new system. That's got me excited, even if it's a little ways off.
Yeah, I've always had a problem with the bounties taking up your. This is how you grind levels. Like, it's just, again, fundamentally something I've just, like, I'm so bored engaging with that type of system, and it's not an engaging system in the first place. So looking at this, like, it looks like, looking at the actual image that they've given us, again, it's all, work in progress. You can see some placeholder images in there, but it's like these different paths that you can choose to then get to the next path, and then it kind of windows down to, like, it looks like 2 paths, and then you've got access to a pinnacle or some sort of type of reward which will give you X. We're not sure if it's going to be like a leveling system by this point, but yeah, and Fire Team Finder. Finally, we're reaching the end of Destiny 2, I suppose, or the end of Destiny, the franchise, for the Light and Darkness saga, anyway, and we're finally getting an LFG in game, but great, thank God.
Better late than never.
Yeah, and I mean, to be honest, it just kind of loops back into what I was talking about with the no power level rise. If this is going to introduce so many more players to meet up and to engage and play with other players, then great. This is what I want for a game like Destiny, because there is this stark kind of disconnect between us as kind of high level players. Us three can just happily go and schedule in a run for a dungeon or get 3 others for a raid fairly easy. Yeah. But it's for your casual audience. It's for your kind of middle kind of type of audience who are not that. They don't vibe with going to a Discord server for LFG or using the sort of mobile app for LFG. They're like, it's not something that they feel comfortable using, but they'll happily kind of use a LFG, an in-game LFG system. Then this is great. Like, out of everything in this article, this is like the 2 big things: is the power rise potentially changing into something else, and then Fire Team Finder. Like I want to know more of these 2 things. Everything else I don't care about. Well, I do, but you get my point. Like, this is all right. So before we move over to our sort of season 22 abilities and armor, exotic armor changes, what's our big kind of read of this article? I'll kick us off here. So yes, like. The article was a big downer. Don't get me wrong. Lots of really, like, it just feels like a disconnect between Bungie and the community at large, especially when it comes to PvP and Gambit and then like the armor stuff. But we aren't covering that type of content. When it comes to some of the core things within this article, great stuff, like quality of life, the previews, they're talking about like upcoming subfamilies, they're talking about like the seasonal structure. I am looking forward to that. Yes, a little bit concerned currently, but like if they really want to really subvert our expectations, then like show us, don't tell us. And yeah, those 2 highlights I made about the no power level rise and the Fire Team Finder, like those were all great stuff. Like there's some really great gems in this article. It's just sadly covered up with a lot of like, oh, okay. A lot of harsh truths, which, to be honest, I don't mind Bungie giving us those harsh truths. I just feel like it's a little bit too late at this point. I feel like some of these like announcements about Crucible and Gambit could have been made last year, in last year's state of the game, or even the year before, because I think the community do need some harsh truths. Like, I want the game to have more focus on PvP, Gambit, and more focus on PvE content as well. But that's not the impression like we're getting here. And they finally told us that. They finally just said, we're not focusing on that. We're not making new maps. We're not doing all that. And that's great. You've told us now. But I wish you told us 2 years ago. Because a lot of the state of the games leading up to this year, last year and the year before, there was that kind of modicum of hope. There was a little bit of like, yeah, we're working on it. Like, I can remember when the state of the games, they talked about Gambit, and they didn't explicitly say, yes, we're making new maps, we're making new content for Gambit, but there was definitely that like reading between, but also in the lines, they were saying, yes, we're investigating more kind of focus on Gambit. And here we are. We've got a map that was removed from the game, and we're getting it back. And it's like, okay, that's great. But yeah, so that's my read of this article. It's, yes, pretty poor around the edges, but within the center, like the juicy parts, some fantastic stuff that are kind of making me want to play the game over a long-term period. Saint, sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good. I was just listening to The Last Word with it's like Cog and Impetus and Travis, yeah. Right? And I can't remember who said it, but basically the vibe that they got was the kind of political news cycle taking out the trash is the phrase. Basically, it's when at the end of the week on like a Friday night, you like release a press release with like all the bad news for the week. And the idea is that they want to put out everything that they think is going to not go over well, or they think is negative news, and then get that out of the way, and then come back in 2 weeks later and just shovel some coal into that hype train. And I think that there's like actually some merit to that. Like, they wanted to get everything they thought was going to be bad out of the way, and then come back in on the 22nd and beyond and just have everything to release for the next like couple of months just be nothing but good news. So yeah, definitely. I don't know if that was Cog or Impetus, but I definitely agree with the idea that they're kind of trying to just like dump off some of this news about Crucible and Gambit, and then just let everything else be good news after this kind of like gets swept under, and then whatever it's. I mean, we're like 9 days out. 10 days out from the big showcase. And then I think after that point, it's just going to be full steam ahead on the hype train for the next 2 seasons is their hope. That's the conjecture, at least.
Impetus, you got any final thoughts there?
I certainly think that's a good take to have. The state of the game in some parts was a list of things that they're not going to prioritize, so that the showcase can be all about the things they want to prioritize. And in that regard, I do want to kind of wait and see what they're going to prioritize before I do give full comments on the state of the game. But really, I mean, it's just a weird spot right now. I think back to last year's state of the game. That's when we found out about the LFG system. They spent a lot of time interviewing the people that were working on the LFG system. What are we going to do this showcase? We still don't have the LFG system. It's going to be coming in the final season. They did tell us that last year. Are they still going to take time in this year's showcase to talk about the LFG system? I mean, there's a lot of stuff that just hasn't been finalized prior to the final shape, and that's kind of where I get a little concerned. The narrative that we got with Lightfall, the in-game narrative, does not feel finalized. Come back to this one spot that you visited at the very end of the Lightfall campaign week after week to get even more lore about stuff that we probably should have talked about in the Lightfall campaign doesn't feel fleshed out, even though the narrative team has gone on to do some interviews saying that this is kind of part of their new approach. There was no indication that was going to be the case, and there are lots of other little details that kind of add up to the picture that Lightfall, which we knew to some extent going into it, was not a planned expansion. Obviously, they needed to push things back to make the final shape even better, but it does not inspire confidence to have the state of the game open up with Joe Blackburn, the face of the portion of Bungie that works on Destiny saying, hey, I'm Joe. This is my job, and I'm going to be passing you off to a bunch of unnamed people to talk about the things that we're not going to prioritize because I need to get back to working on making the final shape great. That's not a great tone to set, especially when the last state of the games have very much been the game director. The first one was Luke, and then, of course, then Joe, stepping in and walking us through the things that were going to happen at those particular points in time for the franchise. Obviously, I'm not asking for other devs to come forward. There's, of course, security risks, as shitty as that is to say, with putting your name out there, especially when you're talking about stuff that you aren't going to be doing in the coming months, coming seasons, coming expansion for Destiny 2. But I really wish that Joe had been the one to relay all of this information. I wish his voice had been there kind of throughout the entire article rather than just saying, hi, bye, right at the start there. There are some really cool things that they were talking about. I am still excited for Destiny 2, but this article was not what I wanted to read. I did not have a good time reading this. I don't come away feeling like we're in a good spot heading up to the final shape. These next 2 seasons have me pretty worried. I want to be excited for the final shape. I really do. And that's why I'm waiting for the showcase, because that will be a really great way to tell whether or not I'm going to be excited. There's a lot of stuff that we know on paper. I want to, get a better sense of what they're committed to, what they're prioritizing. But there's a lot of stuff I hope they do before the final shape in these next 2 seasons. We know that the final season is going to be kind of a touch-up for the core playlists. That season really needs to land for me. The playlists need to be fun to play, and this article did not inspire me when it comes to 2 of the 3 core playlists, Gambit and Crucible. I'm not sure what exactly they're going to be doing when it comes to those changes for the final season. I feel like we're probably just going to get a big change to the Vanguard Strike playlist, which nobody likes playing. Probably the most boring playlist out of the 3. And that's the one that gets, that's the one that's getting medals next season, right? Like that one sees constant changes to it, and it's still not enjoyable to play outside of Nightfalls. And even then, it's really just the highest tier of Nightfall is the one that we all care about because that's got special loot. So I did not enjoy this article. I'm going to wait to see what's coming in the showcase. If the showcase gets me excited, sweet, I'll let you know. If the showcase doesn't get me excited, I'm probably just going to keep my mouth shut. We're just going to keep trucking on because there's not really much we can do as players, as the community, as the audience for the game, other than to, take breaks when we need to. And we've definitely been taking breaks. If you've been paying attention to what we did in Destiny last week, there's not been a lot of Destiny in those recaps, because I think we're all kind of getting to that point where we want to step away because there's not a whole lot keeping us invested. All right. Now that I've brought us down sufficiently, should we jump into the abilities?
Let's pump it back up. Let's talk about the exotics. All right. Yeah.
We're getting new exotic changes. We weren't sure. Rodney did say that they can't necessarily commit to a consistent schedule for these, but we are getting some changes to some pieces of armor, some pretty surprising changes, I might say, to some armor coming for season 22, and that they are hoping to do another pass through for season 23. But let's talk about what we know is coming. Let's start things off with Hunters. Court?
Yeah, so the big one here, the big highlight for me, is the Knucklehead Radar plus Foe Tracer merge. So just a quick recap. So Knucklehead Radar currently gives you basically the radar remains active while aiming down sights. Presuming that's a modifier is not removing the radar, that doesn't counter it. And if you're crouched, you grant enhanced radar. So you've got more wedges to the radar. Foe Tracer will then be shoved into Knucklehead Radar, which will mark the enemy for 5 seconds after hovering the reticle near them for 1 second, which also persists through walls. If the enemy is below 30% HP, you gain increased damage, weapon and ability damage per percent below 30. So i.e. if you've got 10% HP left on that target, you'll do 20% increased damage. So yeah. 2 kind of overlapping exotics are getting merged into each other. So it's my big kind of highlight here. I'm really appreciative of them identifying these two, because they've basically lived together. Thinking of like a Venn diagram, they're almost on top of each other in terms of the fantasy. I know Rodney talked about, these exotic armor, they want to maintain fantasy. So, yeah. Foe Tracer is getting a former artifact modifier added to it. So it's similar to Monochromatic Maestro. When you deal damage with one of your abilities, you gain damage bonus with weapons that have that damage type matching your subclass damage type. So again, thinking of the kind of armor surge system here. Additionally, when you defeat an enemy you've damaged with one of your abilities, either with another ability or with a weapon with a damage type matching your subclass type, you'll spawn one of the collectible objects associated with your subclass. So think Arc, you've got Ionic Trace. Solar, you've got Fire Sprite. Very interesting. We know that seasonal artifacts have been kind of fertile ground for testing the waters and experimenting potential modifiers and content for the abilities sandbox. But I'm actually really curious if this is actively being expanded to future exotic armor, and it feels like we are getting that. Foe Tracer getting a similar vibe to Monochromatic Maestro. Very interesting. So speaking about the merge here, in our last Bungie Dev interview with Chris and Rodney, my big anchor question, the big sort of, this is my question, it's not from the community, this is what I wanted to ask Rodney, who is the armor lead, was the whole kind of, why don't you just start removing old exotics? So Rodney obviously didn't rule it out. They're not going to rule stuff like that out, because things can change over the years, but the impression I got was obviously that they don't want to do that. They wish to maintain exotic fantasy. So very valid point. And yeah, the Foe Tracer cross with Knucklehead change is definitely echoing that desire. I'm still of the opinion that sunsetting some of the older overlapping exotics is a necessary change to the game, but the idea to condense the effects of one exotic into another and overhaul the other rather than making a brand new exotic with new effects is definitely sound. It's my second option when it comes to exotic armor. So if this is the armor team setting the foundations for current underperforming and overlapping exotics to be changed in a similar manner, then I am absolutely all for it. Before I move on to the other exotics, you guys got any kind of comments about a potential merge with Titan and Warlock exotics in the future?
I can't think of a Warlock one that I'd want to get merged here.
Not necessarily like any examples, but what's your vibe with this, with the idea of merging exotics?
Yeah, it's funny
definitely
for them to
it.
be like, yeah, they were like, I don't know about that. And they were like, just kidding, we're going to do it, and we're going to do it really well.
Yeah, they definitely nailed it this time around, so I'm open to it.
Got any examples?
Putting
you all in the spot.
Just, you merge Crest of Alpha Lupi and Kepri's Horn together. That would be real cool, because they're both barricade exotics, and neither of them do enough.
Yeah.
I don't know what else. That's just kind of off the top of my head, because I want Crest Alpha Lupi to be better, basically, is where that's coming from. And I'm not sure what else you can merge it with.
I'm frantically going through all of these exotics in my dim here, trying to see what I'd want.
Well, as another example for hunters, I think the one that I was, I think we mentioned during that interview, but I like Blight Ranger and Raiju's Harness. They're almost a circle again. It's these two exotics that are just very similar in vibe, but
yeah.
I'm not sure which one you could splinter off and do something completely different. Because again, it's still, even though they're merging two exotics, one's still getting basically an overhaul. It's a completely new direction. So there's still a lot of work when it comes to merging exotics. But yeah, like I said, if this is something that they're kind of testing the waters, absolutely go for it. Like, completely go down this path, because this is great. It's definitely a great decision.
Yeah, part of the reason why I'm so on board with it is we get new exotic armor every season, right? It's one piece for the non-expansion seasons, but yeah, do not be afraid to merge stuff. Like we have plenty of options, and the top spots, the top performing armor, haven't really changed that dramatically over the years. I mean, I guess Starfire was probably the last one, the major one to get knocked down, but it's not like we don't have excellent replacements or substitutes for what to put down on a well. Obviously, I mean, Lunafaction boots have been around since Vanilla D2, so you've always got that to fall back on. Nobody's going to hate you for that. Yeah, I mean, that's part of the reason. Yeah, I could go on and on, but I won't. So I'm excited for this. Especially after hearing Rodney talk about it, I wasn't expecting this kind of a change, this rework, but
Yeah.
it's cool to see that they're open to it, and I hope that the wider community responds well to it, because I think we're all pretty pumped for the new Foe Tracer, the new Knucklehead Radar. Yeah, I'm just kind of excited to see what happens, and maybe we get new exotic armor, and it's like, ooh, this would be a wonderful addition to this existing piece, or maybe we should take this existing piece of armor and take that effect and apply it to this new one, because that could be really strong. So,
Just speaking from like reading these changes, I think Knucklehead Radar is still going to be more of a PvP oriented exotic anyway. Yeah, it's got a little bit of kind of you can do some funkiness in PvE, and some of the scientists use Foe Tracer's current effects as a kind of petri dish for all their science stuff, measuring HP health and all that. So that's presumably all going to still be maintained with Knucklehead Radar. But the Foe Tracer change is definitely something, as a hunter, we don't have anything like this. The thing that was kind of screaming out to me was Crown of Tempests, given that kind of similar vibe in terms of when you can spawn. Sorry, not Crown of Tempests. The Fallen Sunstar. When you spawn collectible objects associated with your subclass. Yes, that's only focused on ionic traces, but we don't necessarily have anything that can produce these collectible objects. So I'm really glad that they're kind of go down that path. Over on the chest side, we've got Lucky Raspberry, which I was not expecting, even though it's one of those very underwhelming, underutilized exotics. I wasn't expecting to see on this exotic armor. It's getting a sort of Shinobu's Vow vibe, and it's getting baked in intrinsic overload counter. So pretty super interested in how this will perform. Just as a quick recap here, so they are expanding the chaining capabilities of the arc bolt grenades. Instead of basing the grenade energy going on those chains, each time you damage an enemy, not kill an enemy, but damage an enemy with the lightning strikes from the jolted condition. So when a combatant is jolted, it'll periodically give off a kind of chain lightning strike effect. And if you damage them more often, that effect kind of pulses more often. As well as each time you pick up an ionic trace, you gain additional grenade energy. So again, this is another kind of Fallen Sunstar vibe. Pity you can't pair Foe Tracer and Lucky Raspberry, because you'd be going completely insane with the arc, all the arc goodness. But so they've given the Arc Bolt the ability to stun Overload champions, so you don't necessarily need to run Spark of Ions to get the grenade to just apply Jolt, when you can just apply the Overload counter effect on them. So yeah, really interested here. Great seeing more built-in champion counters. I've actually always had a soft spot for Lucky Raspberry, because it was one of my first Destiny 1 exotics, and during year 1 I only ever played Blade Dancer in both sandboxes. I think arc bolts are really cool thematically in terms of like a grenade. I know they're not that great damage wise, they're pretty heavy cooldown. So it might actually get me to come off Shinobu's Vow. The only reason that I use Shinobu's Vow is that you get double skip grenades, but the skip grenades are not great. They're pretty low damage. They're much lower damage compared to arc bolts. Whereas arc bolts, again, they're not that powerful, but they're certainly can chain around an entire room if you make it. Let me just load up here. So damage wise, base damage is 492 for an arc bolt. Flashbang with the actual epicenter 690. Flux grenades, which is like the more powerful grenade here, is 1,436 damage on stick. Again, these are all just base values. They get multiplied in the various activities that we enter, but it's certainly one of the lesser damage grenades compared to the rest. So great to see that particular change. And I think, so I made this point when we were making the exotic, in our exotic armor vibe check episode a few weeks ago. I made the big point talking about, they need to lean heavy into, a lot of these exotics need to lean heavy into their whole kind of shtick, their whole vibe. And here they have with the Arc Bolt. Like, Arc Bolt now does this. You can get more Arc Bolt energy back, and it's like the whole kitchen sink's in there as well. So if an exotic buffs one specific thing, for example here with Arc Bolts, then just go crazy about it. That's my big kind of vibe when it comes to exotic armor. If like you've got an exotic piece of armor that does one thing, make that one thing spread, like kind of cut off and. Like I think of a family tree, how it just branches off and does all these other things, but it's just for that one thing, that one grenade. Otherwise, the exotic just needs to buff kind of other things. So if they went a different path with Lucky Raspberry, then it buffs other arc grenades, but not as potent as arc bolts, and then just have additional subclass bonuses to play into that particular fantasy as well. But I think they've done a really great job here. Like they've went and. I think Lucky Raspberry was one of the exotics I did mention. It was certainly one that they needed to really like make arc bolts do all the things, and it is doing all the things. So great. Mm-hmm. And finally, I don't have as much of a giant spiel to make here because it's a great change. But Renewal Grasps is getting its previous nerf to the cooldown unnerfed. So rejoice. Love to see it, and may the Dustfield spam commence again, both PvP and PvE.
Whoa. Hold on.
But also, well, no. Strictly speaking, in PvE, this is going to be great yes. Stuff. I do have a build that obviously plays into Renewal Grasp, but the whole build is set up to get your grenade back, which is not ideal. So I'm going to have to sort of retune that Stasis Hunter build a little bit, but great to see. All right, Titans. Mr. Saint, how are we vibing?
Yeah, we got a lot of damage stacking stuff going on here. The Titans have like every flavor of damage stacking basically these days. Up first, we've got Icefall Mantle and Doomfang Pauldrons are getting the Armor Surge buff system added to their current effects. So, as a reminder, all these damage bonuses utilize that Armor Surge system, just like the buff you would get from picking up orbs off of the ground. You put those mods in your boots, right? Stack up to, I believe, 22% is the max, right? Now, these will stack up to a tier higher than that at 25%. But again, they are that same kind of surge system. So they will stack with all of your debuffs, Weaken, Tractor Cannon, Divinity, Tether, and they will work also with empowering buffs, Radiance, Weapons of Light, and Radiant itself, right, from Solar.
Yep.
This is also in addition to like the normal effects, right? For Icefall Mantle and Doomfang Pauldrons, Icefall Mantle and Doomfang also have conditions similar to Eternal Warrior, where you can get up to that max stack of 25% really quick. So Icewall Mantle will increase your stasis weapon damage when you get rapid stasis kills, weapons or abilities. And then when you activate your class ability, you immediately gain that highest tier of 25%, which is pretty easy to do. So it's pretty strong there. But even stronger than that is Doomfang Pauldrons. Increased void weapon damage when getting rapid void kills. When you perform a void melee kill, you immediately gain the highest tier bonus of 25%. So you should keep in mind that, Icewall Mantle, you're getting that like overshield. Yeah, that's great. But Doomfang Pauldrons, when you get a powered void melee kill, you're getting about 20% of your super energy back. You throw in a weapon with Pugilist and or Swashbuckler, Fewer Tour Sidearm, Yesteryear, Positive Outlook, Basso Ostinato, Wilder Flight even. These are just going to contribute to more, you build up into 100 strength. You get some Pugilist weapons going for that melee energy back really quickly. You could have some insanely quick, super cooldowns here. And you could even throw stuff on top of that, like Offensive Bulwark. But yeah, the idea that you could throw a single shield and, gain an overshield, get 20% of your super energy, and immediately get a 25% void buff that you could then chain on to other targets is just... It's insane. I'm really looking forward to this one. I'm definitely going to be putting together a Doomfangs build in anticipation of their buff next season. And then, finally, on the damage stacking side, we have a continued bit of a buff with Path of the Burning Steps and Eternal Warrior. Obviously, Path of the Burning Steps kind of being the original blueprint for these systems. They got, honestly, a bit of a nerf, but this is now super ubiquitous, which is great to see. So it balances out a little bit. Path of the Burning Steps also gets in a max stacks activation condition with Solar Grenade Kill, which is... it's not quite, there's not also that utility that's quite as strong as Doomfangs maybe, but still pretty easy to get a solar kill and to just start racking up kills there. And then Eternal Warrior has a really interesting one where your arc weapon damage bonus max stack is going to be a full 30 seconds whenever you end your Fist of Havoc super. Now keep in mind, this is not Arc super, this does not include Thunder Crash, but when you finish Fist of Havoc, you get 30 seconds, which is originally 10, so it's tripled up, given that this one has such a lower activation condition. The timer is so much longer for the cooldown of that activation condition for max stack. But yeah, really interesting to see so many flavors of the damage stacking coming online here, and also with those additional options to trigger them, which I think will definitely help, because when we initially reviewed these, I think a few episodes ago, and initially talked about them, a big drawback on these is that picking up an orb was so easy that the activation conditions for these seem too difficult. And now that there's more conditions for each of these to get that max 25% stack, I definitely think that increases their draw just as far as like exotic pieces of armor goes, which is great to see. Just a couple more for the Titan. ACD0 Feedback Fence is getting a pretty big rework where basically it's honestly not super clear with the activation condition. It says when you get melee, when you get armor charge off of melee hits, am I reading that? Yeah, when melee hits give you an armor charge, which is really not very clear what that means. Is that it just literally hitting something with a melee attack gives you armor charge? Or does that mean if you generate an orb with something like heavy-handed, it's going to give you an armor charge? That is not really clear. But the rest of the effect is you will take reduced melee damage when you have that armor charge. And then taking melee damage, you will emit a burst of damaging arc energy that will consume those charge, deal damage based on a number of stacks, 0 to 3, and it will also jolt targets, which is really nice. I don't know how often you're going to be up and close with those overload champions, but jolt, as a reminder, will stun those overload champions. Is honestly just way better than a general just shockwave IMO. Finally, we have a revamp for Hollowfire Heart, which they say is going to build into sunspots. And that's it. not really. That's good. It's getting reworked, so it's losing its kind of passive ability regen because Hoyle just is ubiquitous and better than that. And they say will allow you to build more to sunspots, and then you will still keep that regen, that really high regen when your super is actually charged. Definitely interested in that one because consecration is very good, and when something allows you to run consecration and generate sunspots anyways, and also be using roaring flames over Soul Invictus, that's very interesting. But yeah, I mean, we already have we were talking about this again before the show. Like you've already got Phoenix Cradle, you've already got Lordly Splendor, so I'm not really sure what that one's going to do, but definitely interested. Overall, I think Doomfang is coming out the strongest from this. We'll see how Hall of Fire lands. But yeah, that's Titans. Warlocks, what is going on? What is going on over there, man?
I'm not quite sure, to be honest. We have a very interesting selection of armor that's getting tweaked. So let's start with Astrocyte Verse. The blink that is modified by Astrocyte Verse will create a volatile AoE effect. I don't really. That's cool. On top of that, when you're using the Nova Warp Super, the Dark Blink ability no longer consumes super energy, so you get movement for free, I suppose. But oh boy, I was pretty harsh on this when we did our initial armor review. I don't think this is going to change anything. I guess you can be even more annoying in PvP with it. I've definitely played against some people that know how to make use of it, and I have screamed like you wouldn't believe when I die to these people. So now I can't wait to become volatile and then explode and kill my teammates on accident or intentionally, I guess, when I die to a blink user. But yeah, I mean, there is some synergy there. You've got the Echo of Cessation, where killing volatile targets spawn a Void Breach with a 10-second cooldown. Sweet. I'm not really, if you're a blink user, go crazy. I am not one of you. So Geomag stabilizers are getting some more functionality. Ionic traces will generate additional super energy when you collect those when running this. That's nice-ish. It's still a super exotic, and I'm harsh on those in particular. But there you go. More Geomag usage, I guess. Faster supers, but not quite as fast as it used to be. Wings of Sacred Dawn. The fantasy for this, they say, is the orbital weapons platform. The change here is that you will have your solar weapons automatically reloaded from reserves, including the weapon in your hand, when you get an ADS kill. So you must be ADS specifically, which is already key to the fantasy of the Wings of Sacred Dawn, and they do say, hey, try this out with Xenophage next season. Being in the air is already very risky. I went off on this part of the Solar Warlock fantasy back when Solar 3.0 debuted, but not going to try this out in in-game PvE. May try it out a little bit in probably still PvP, maybe low-level PvE just for the fun of it, but don't think I'll be recommending this piece of armor even after this change. One that I might, this is going to be a big risk one though, is Winter's Guile. So this now has stasis melee synergy, where the Penumbral Blast, when you freeze an opponent with a Penumbral Blast, they will shatter automatically after a short delay. Shatter, of course, is a counter to Unstoppable Champions, so if you want to get nice and close to, an Unstoppable Ogre and then stun them with your melee before they flatten you with their melee, you definitely can do that now with Winter's Guile. That would be very interesting strats. I will respect the hell out of you if you do try that. I'm probably going to stay a little bit further away when it comes to the Unstopped Champions specifically, but an auto shatter does make Winter's Guile a little bit more lethal. You'll definitely be able to, if you try this first on a minor tier enemy, get that kill. Again, Winter's Guile, where you eliminate enemies with melee attacks, you increase your melee damage. So if you probably smart here to start with like killing a thrall, either through, it'll have to be through Shatter with Penumbral Blast because it doesn't deal that much damage. You then start ramping that up. That can be quite useful there. And it does stack to some very, very high damage at 5 stacks, a 275% melee damage increase. So Winter's Guile, of course, now does work with glaives. Keep that in mind. So, I mean, again, I'm just thinking out loud here. There are some opportunities, some strats that could go into this. Still don't have a stasis glaive other than Winter Bite, but that might be changing in the future. We shall see. So, yeah, kind of excited for Winter's Guile. The other 3, not going to be using them really to begin with, and I won't be after the change. So let's go Winter's Guile. Sweet, love it. Love the melee warlock exotics. Big hitters, all of them. Let's move on to abilities, shall we? Unless someone has some final thoughts they want to see about exotic armor.
Yeah, real quickly, I'm just curious. I was just thinking while you're reading that out for Winter's Guile, wonder if the Stasis Shatter will inherit the bonus melee damage. I don't think it currently does now, but if it's going to basically auto shatter, I wonder if that damage will amplify with the whatever stack you have for Winter's Guile. So let's say 275% increase to the shatter damage. That might be an interesting interaction if that's what's going to happen. The educated guess here is I don't think that's going to happen because just the way shatter works, it doesn't really go off by modifiers like I think it's like Scorch into Ignition. Like Winter's Guile times 5 plus Incinerator Snap does give you that 275% increased ignition damage. I know there's some weirdness happening, at least this season. There's been some strange stuff happening with Scorch and Ignition not actually inheriting that damage bonus, so we'll see. That's just something that you were, when you were reading it out, I was just curious if that might be something we could see with that in the future, because that would be great, because the shatter would be pretty cataclysmic. It's like almost 300% extra damage.
Yeah, stun the champion and then also take a good chunk of health off of it. Yeah, again, unstops are not the kind of enemy that you want to get up close and personal to. Penumbral ranged blast does have good range, but you're still got to make sure you're on target with the blast, and that odor beam will fry you. Maybe you try it on the taken phalanx. Maybe that's worst case you just get booped. Right. Maybe not the ogre.
Saint, any final thoughts there?
I don't know. I'm hoping it does a chunk. We've been calling Astrocyte Verse with the Volatile Astrocyte Flopper. For any of you zombies players out there, you will appreciate that reference. I'm hoping that one sticks. Okay.
Yeah, it's definitely a flopper. That's for sure. Fishbowl looking ass.
Oh dear. All right.
Yeah. Let's get into the abilities, huh?
Yeah, we've got abilities here. We're going to sort of kind of glide through some of these because they're pretty much bog standard stuff. We do have some strand things here, but for Titans here, we've got Barricades. Turn Barricade base cooldown increased from 48 seconds to 70 seconds, so that's at Resilience Tier 3. At Resilience Tier 10, just a comparison, that's going from 28 seconds to 41 seconds, so quite a big kind of cooldown nerf there. Obviously, that's for a PvP change, but it will affect PvE. But they are tweaking with the Barricade's health, so the DR versus PvE combatants increased to compensate for the reduced health in PvP. And for Thunder Crash Titans, the super is being decreased from one tier to the next, from 500 seconds to 556. That's Super Tier 3 to Tier 2. We're going down the tiers here rather than up, which is going to match the other roaming supers. So for perspective, for Titan supers, tier 5, which is the fastest cooldown at 417 seconds, that's Bubble. They don't have anything in tier 4. They've still got Burning Maul in tier 3, which is 500 seconds, and then tier 2, which is what we've been talking about here, Fist of Havoc will join, Thunder Crash will join Fist of Havoc, Sentinel Shield, Hammer Soul, and Glacial Quake. And there's nothing in tier 1 because they reduced the cooldown for Hammer Soul a few seasons ago, or a few patches ago, to be in tier 2 now. Saint, we've got some strand nerfs, big nerfs, but also some buffs as well.
Yeah, the barricade stuff, it's fine. I mean, there's going to be ways to proc stuff like Reaper with your dash, anyways. Towering barricade's still going to be fine. Really don't think that's that bad. Same thing for Thunder Crash. I don't really think those are going to be a huge PvE ones. But the strand stuff, this stuff is big. The Strand Titan Suspend build has been the build, and now Strand is seeing some sizable nerfs. Honestly, probably pretty necessary because of how obscenely strong Suspend is right now and has been since Lightfall came out. So, starting off, Suspend. Reduce base suspend duration versus non-champion PvE combatants from 8 seconds to 5. Ouch, but still pretty strong. Non-champion combatants, rank and file, elites, and mini bosses, right? So, basically generally everything outside of your actual champions, and we'll talk about that in just a second. And then the duration that you get from continuity, which increases suspend duration, is now going from 12 seconds to 7 seconds. So basically you'll have 5 seconds a base against non-champions, or 7 seconds if you have continuity up. And then with champions, it's even... This one is really got gutted. Base suspend duration versus champions has gone from 8 seconds to 3 seconds, and only 4 seconds with threat of continuity. Which that's harsh, man. It's kind of interesting because before you could suspend an unstopped champ for so long that they would become unstunned before they would even fall down to the ground, which is kind of ridiculous. So now we definitely won't be in that case anymore. I definitely think this is going to drive threaded continuity usage up because you're going to need threaded continuity to even be at 50% on those unstopped champion suspends of what it used to be. Obviously, we've talked about suspend builds before, and especially with like a Bant Leap, there's ways to keep that up, incredibly high uptime on that. But now it's not going to be like continual uptime. Increased snap damage dealt to suspended bosses by 67%. Snap damage refers to boss combatants that are unable to be physically suspended. Instead, they get a burst of damage after a few seconds, like a stasis shatter. So that's nice, but man, yeah, this is pretty big gut of suspension here. Strand Titan will definitely be strong because of the way Bant Leap works and its intrinsic champion counter with your grenade and suspend. But yeah, pretty big hit. But it's not the only thing that is happening to Strand. We also have a lot of other changes to pretty much every other verb. So I'll hit on a couple of those real quick. Threadlings are getting a big time damage increase in PvE, 30% versus combatants. So if you pair that with the Thread of Evolution, you get faster and further traveling Threadlings, and a further 33% damage increase. Resident Brood Master, how you feeling over here?
The swarm hungers. My pretties. Yay.
Yeah, Threadlings all went to college and
that's right.
Yep.
They've been working out.
Their diplomas. They've got their big boy jobs now.
This is going to be great. Yeah, I think this especially makes Hatchling a much stronger weapon perk. The Warlock kit is going to be fine because we can just simply put out so many Threadlings that you can kind of overwhelm them. That part didn't need a huge damage buff, but if you are not on Strand subclass and you do happen to have a Strand weapon for whatever reason with Hatchling, or you're playing on Strand Hunter or Strand Titan where you don't have that ability access to Threadlings, I think the Hatchling perk is really going to be, that extra effect from that perk is going to be a little bit more worthwhile, hopefully. So love to see that. Love to see that. I can actually take over the rest of the verbs here, Saint, if you want. And
yeah, I was going to say,
we changes.
Keep it going here. We got a bunch to go through. Go ahead, Impetus.
Tangles. This is another long requested feature. Reduce the Tangle creation cooldown time from 15 seconds to 12 seconds. We take it. It's a smaller change than we wanted, but we're getting there. Love it. Sever. PvE combatants affected by Sever now have their outgoing damage reduced by 40%, that's 40%, versus 30%. That is a huge buff to Navigator. The trace rifle from our most recent dungeon goes to the deep, so go grab that if you haven't already. Looking at you, Saint.
Yeah.
And then Grapple. Grapple melee will now always take priority while active, regardless of whether or not a target is within range, just to make that a little bit more consistent. Again, nice quality of life function here. I think that's going to make Grapple melee is just a great tool anyways, so love to see that now. Never like whiffing that and then being right next to somebody and then getting stomped to death. So got a few changes coming to the various aspects here. If you guys don't mind, I'll just go through the Warlock and the Hunter one at the same time here. So for Hunters, the Silk Strike Super, they've increased the damage resistance from 40% to 45%. They have reduced the suppression time between Silk Strike Super air attacks, and they've reduced the vertical lift provided by Silk Strike's heavy air attack to reduce instances of missing the primary target. So all in all, should be a little bit more consistent and then also a tad bit stronger. The Threaded Spectre aspect for Hunters, they have increased the lifetime from 10 to 12 seconds. They have increased the Threaded Spectre health versus PvE combatants, and they have also made it so that the Spectre now takes longer to detect nearby PvE combatants at the beginning of its lifetime, and those combatants are now more consistently focused on Threaded Spectre instead of the Hunter. Allied players no longer have reticle magnetism toward Threaded Spectre. I've never known that was a problem. That is hilarious. I can only imagine how frustrating that must be, but so hopefully that makes that aspect a little bit more worthwhile. The Wanderer aspect for the Warlocks, destroying a tingle now creates a delayed suspending detonation, and they have increased that detonation radius from 6 to 7 meters against PvE combatants. They have increased the thrown Wanderer Tangle detonation damage to match standard Tangle detonations. With the changes to Suspend, I'm just not quite sure how viable that's going to be, but at least they're trying to buff it. I do appreciate that. Mm-hmm. We've got a lot of changes here to fragments. I'll take about half of these and pass you off to Court for the remainder. Let's start with Threat of Mind. The current effect here is killing enemies affected by Suspend grants class ability energy based on the enemy rank. That is being changed to reduce the class energy gain based on the tier of the defeated target. So minor tier combatants are reduced from 15% to 10%. Major combatants and players are reduced from 25% to 15%, and then bosses, champions, and mini-bosses are reduced from 50% to 25%. Pretty substantial here. Suspend is really just getting absolutely boxed in here, which it needed, but they're being very consistent with their changes here. Threat of Generation, probably the strongest fragment and strand. Current effect, dealing damage, grants grenade ability energy. They have changed that, so reduction in the overall energy gain per damage event against PvE enemies by about 20%. That's going to hit it, but it's still going to be probably one of the strongest ones. That's going to be interesting. Threat of Propagation, this will be my last one here. Current effect, the Powered Melee grants Unraveling Rounds. That's a kill, right? Powered Melee kill grants Unraveling Rounds. Is that correct?
Yep.
Yeah. So this is just getting a stat bonus added to it. The current effect is still going to be in effect here. It is now going to grant you plus 10 to your strength. Nice little change. Makes a lot of sense. Court, I'll pass you off for the last final threads here.
Okay, so Thread of Continuity, which is the strand debuffs last longer. Well, that plus 10 strength has been removed from it to hop over to Propagation. Thread of Wisdom, the current effect here is suspended enemy precision kills create a Orb of Power. That's that 10-second cooldown that we've seen with other subclasses. They're no longer requiring that precision kill to activate, so it's all kind of been normalized with the other subclasses. I know Void had that with the weaken verb. They changed that, I think, was it this season or was it this last season? I know it was a fairly recent change, so I wasn't really interested in a lot of those kind of, you have to make a precision kill on a X subclass verbed enemy. So yeah, nice change. More Orbs of Power, great for my builds. Thread of Isolation, the current effect, severing burst on precision hits. They've actually reduced the number of precision hits required to activate by an average of about 30%, which will vary on weapon archetype. So another great kind of severing burst change here for your sever verb. And finally, and certainly not least here, is Thread of Rebirth. The current effect is spawns threadlings from strand weapon kills based on a counter. So when the counter reaches 100%, then a threadling will spawn. They're still keeping that kind of counter effect, but they're now increasing the number of threadlings that can spawn based on the tier of the defeated target. So minor combatants, you'll get one threadling. That's 34% to the counter. Elite combatants and players are two threadlings, and that's 67% to the counter. And boss, champion, or mini-boss combatants are three threadlings, and that is a guaranteed spawn. So if you kill a champion with your strand weapon kill, you'll get three threadling spawn. So that's great. Another great change with the threading buffs. Strand warlocks are looking at their dim, seeing which strand weapons they have.
Literally, I'm looking at circular logic, and I'm looking at Carax's Distress, baby. Go crazy.
Yep, strand weapons with your hatchling perk. So 3 plus a hatchling spawn as well. That's 4.
Man, imagine killing a champion with Caraxus and 4 threadlings just pop out and start eating everything around it. Beautiful.
Yeah,
I'm to be honest, I am absolutely loving these changes to threadlings, because it's just it's all these little minions going around just eating everything. It's great. Love it. Love this vibe. Certainly plays into their what was the phrase they referred it to? The beats per minute, the actions per minute.
Yeah, APM. Yeah.
we're still maintaining that fantasy. And finally, some sort of more changes that they didn't actually speak about here. I kind of wish they'd just shoved it all in here. And some bug fixes like Celestial Fire Scorch not activating melee perks like Sunbracers are also coming in Season 22. I think, if I can remember correctly, there was something to do with Liar's Handshake as well. If you had Gathering Storm on, there was some kind of weirdness going on with that. I think that's also coming, but it's either Season 22 or mid-Season 22 or Season 23. Plus, they are looking at a suite of Season 23 changes being looked at, including another batch of exotic armor changes. And yeah, that's it for another week of PvE. Any final thoughts, lads? Lots to talk about today.
Yeah, long episode, lots to talk about. Just hopefully excited for the what we're assuming will be coming out this week. The weapons, Season 22 weapons changes, getting to find out specifically what's happening to some of those perks. And then, of course, looking forward to the showcase, hoping to be really excited and wowed by the stuff that's coming.
Yeah, hate to see Suspend get nerfed so hard, but also I think we kind of all knew it was coming, and yeah, it had 2 seasons of being obscenely strong. So we had our fun with Suspend. Now it's time. It's time for Threadlinks to get the spotlight a little bit. Yeah, and like we were talking about earlier, we were talking about the new the final aspects that are coming out for each class. Hopefully we'll see a little bit more of the Sever in Unravel routes, kind of bubble up a little bit more in the Sandbox. Man, and the part at the very end where there were more exotic armor changes coming. Really nothing. I know they were oh, we don't want to, overinflate expectations, but I don't think you really could have done that, given that it seems like they're hoping to touch on almost every exotic armor piece and bring it all up to parity, which is awesome. Absolutely love to see that.
And it's good time too, since we're getting so many more exotic engrams now that those have replaced a lot of pinnacle engrams too. So yeah, they are striking while the iron's hot, and I love it for them.
All right. Well, that is all we've got for episode 73 of PvE. Thanks for listening. After coming back from a break, it feels good to come back with a big episode like this. Hopefully, over the next few weeks, we will continue with more interesting, breakdowns and updates and patch notes to discuss as we roll in. It's just about a week and a half away now from the big final shape reveal and showcase of the third season of this year. Thanks for listening. And we also want to thank our audio engineer, Autodidaktos, for helping us sound our best each and every episode. My name has been Syncbeer. You can find me on Twitter at Syncbeer, hanging out over in the Destiny Massive Breakdowns Discord channel or in-game. Court, where can our listeners find you?
Yep, you can find me over on Twitter and various other social media websites as Court Projects, over on Discord also as Court Projects, and you can find my infographics and spreadsheets over on the Destiny Massive Breakdowns website, along with other community-made applications, spreadsheets, and all that jazz to enhance your Destiny experience. Impetus, where can we find you?
My name is Impetus. You can find me by that name in Discord and in Destiny, and as Impetus always on Twitter. Thank you so much for listening, and we will see you next week.